Welcome to this explainer, everyone. Today, we're exploring something that you interact with literally every single day, but probably rarely think about: the aquatic ecosystem. We're going to uncover exactly how water acts as the ultimate life support system for just an incredible variety of living things. Seriously, if you really want to understand how life operates on Earth, you have to understand our waters. I'm absolutely thrilled to guide you through this, so let's get right into it. Here's a quick look at the journey we'll be taking today. First, a welcome to aquatic ecosystems. Then we'll map out the massive marine environment before shrinking all the way down to the rare freshwater ecosystem. Next, we'll compare standing versus flowing water, and finally, we'll wrap up with the highly diverse wetlands. Section 1. Welcome to aquatic ecosystems. Let's look at how foundational water really is to all these diverse habitats we're about to explore. Okay, let's dive into this. Before we go splitting things up into oceans and rivers, we really need a baseline. So an aquatic ecosystem is basically this massive umbrella. It includes everything from the deepest, darkest oceans to that little bubbling stream in your local park. And what defines it isn't just that it's wet, right? It's that the organisms living there depend on water for absolutely all of their life activities. We're talking food, shelter, reproduction, the whole shebang. They don't just swim in it, their entire existence is fundamentally tethered to it. Section 2. The massive marine environment. Let's zoom way out to the macro level. The marine ecosystem covers the largest surface area of the Earth. It is absolutely immense. And, it's incredibly varied, too. This isn't just open, empty water. We're talking vast oceans, seas, bustling intertidal zones, vibrant reefs, and deep seabeds. The source material points out that it features highly specialized zones, things like estuaries, rock pools, and even extreme environments like superheated hydrothermal vents right on the ocean floor. The sheer scale and variety here is just staggering. But there is a very strict boundary line in the aquatic world. Freshwater organisms simply cannot survive in marine ecosystems. Why? Well, because marine water is highly concentrated with salt. This is a critical chemical boundary. It acts like an invisible, impenetrable wall. You might think, hey, water is water, but to our freshwater friends, that high salt concentration means they can't just take a wrong turn and swim into the ocean. Their biology simply won't allow them to survive. Section 3. The rare freshwater ecosystem. Let's shift our focus to something surprisingly small, yet incredibly vital. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this single number, 0.8%. That is the tiny portion of the Earth covered by freshwater. Just think about that for a second. If all the water on Earth fit into a gallon jug, freshwater would literally be barely a teaspoon. We just talked about the massive surface area of the marine ecosystem, and right next to it, freshwater is surviving on less than 1% of the Earth's surface. Yet within this tiny space, we find an incredible variety of life. This visual really reinforces that staggering contrast. Everything we think of when we imagine inland water, all those ponds, lakes, wetlands, swamps, rivers, streams, and crucially, the drinking water we rely on for our own survival and agriculture, has to fit into that tiny, almost invisible sliver. It really makes you realize just how precious and unbelievably concentrated this resource actually is. Section 4. Standing versus flowing water. Let's drill down and see how water movement dictates life. Let's compare these two distinct freshwater worlds. On one side, we have lentic habitats. These are standing water bodies, like pools, ponds, and reservoirs where the water is perfectly still. Then, on the other side, we have lotic habitats, flowing water bodies like streams and rivers. This single difference in water movement dictates the entire biological game, setting up entirely different types of creatures that thrive in each setup. Let's look closely at lentic life first. The still, standing water environments. Because the water isn't rushing away, it becomes this perfect nursery for algae, which in turn feeds crabs and shrimps. Picture a calm pond on a hot summer day. Salamanders, frogs, alligators, and water snakes, they all find their shelter here. It's a remarkably active, thriving mini ecosystem, all built around water that basically stays perfectly still. Let's move to and see how this builds when we introduce a current. Here we have lotic life, the flowing water of streams and rivers. So we're contrasting those still water reptiles from a moment ago with creatures that are entirely adapted to constant movement. You'll find active insect species like mayflies and beetles alongside these highly active swimming mammals. Think otters, beavers, and river dolphins. They literally rely on the rush of the river to hunt and survive. Section 5. The diverse wetlands. Let's introduce the really unique middle ground of aquatic ecosystems. Wetlands are fascinating because, well, they refuse to fit into a neat box. They beautifully bridge the gap between land and water. These are marshy areas that are only sometimes covered in water. And because of this constant fluctuation, never fully submerged but never completely dry, wetlands boast an incredibly wide, unique diversity of plants and animals that have fully adapted to this shifting middle ground. Some prime examples of wetland habitats include swamps and marshes. The life here has to be highly specialized. Take the water lily, for instance. Water lilies uniquely thrive here, firmly rooting themselves in an environment that is only sometimes underwater. It's just a brilliant example of life carving out a very, very specific niche. So the crucial point is summarized beautifully right here in our source material. The water organisms depend on water for their food, shelter, reproduction, and all other life activities. Water supports many lives. Whether it's a superheated hydrothermal vent deep in the ocean, a perfectly still lentic pond, a rushing lotic river, or a constantly shifting wetland, this scientific classification is the concrete reality of how life is sustained on our planet. Which leaves us with this final thought. We've seen the massive scale of the oceans, right? And we've seen the incredible, concentrated diversity of life in freshwater streams and swamps. But knowing that all of those freshwater ecosystems exist on a microscopic 0.8% sliver of the Earth's surface, the question really becomes, how do we ensure that tiny, fragile fraction of our planet continues to support so many lives? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.